Hello, I'm Kevin Jordan, and today we're going to be talking about grounded theory. Now, grounded theory is the development of theories based on a phenomenon of interest. Now, you can't really talk about grounded theory unless you talk about the founding fathers of grounded theory, which is Barney Glasser and Anselm Strauss. Both of them were sociologists who wrote a book in 1965 called The Awareness of Dying. This was based on an experiment they did within a hospital in which they actually went to patients that were dying, whether or not they were aware or unaware, and they actually tried to look into how they were interacted with and how they were treated within the hospital. Now, to do the research for this experiment, they came up with a method called the constant comparative method. Basically, they were comparing each patient to each other, as well as the interactions that they were receiving were being compared at the same time, and that's how they actually received the data that they later on put together for this book. There's qualities of a good qualitative researcher that you want to have while you're doing this. Number one is absence of truth. You don't want to be searching for the truth per se. You actually want to be looking for the plausibility of data. Context. Context is to make sure that your research is being done in the proper environment, and that way your data will actually be more viable in the end. Meaning. Meaning will solidify the importance of your data by the amount and the type of research that you're doing. Researcher is an instrument. You are a very important tool during the research process. That's why it's important for you to make sure that you can step back and not be part of the research yourself. You want to keep a non-biased opinion, and remember that closeness to this research can actually affect your data in the end. And very close to that is your participant-researcher relationship. If you're close to the participant that you're actually asking questions to on an issue, it can actually affect your data based on the communication between you two. If you're very close, or even if you're distant from the participant, your data will be affected. Required skill set. Though you want to be organized and attentive while doing your research, it's even more important to build a rapport with your participant and the research itself, as well as be an active listener and be able to think on your feet while you're doing your research. Flexibility of a design. You want to be able to intrude or to stand back from certain data. Being able to do this will actually affect the data in the long run. It can actually help you out. Addressing issues effectively. This is basically like saying, leave no stone unturned, or take a look at everything from every angle. Now, what you're going to see here is I actually brought up symbolic interactionism. This is basically saying that there are certain things or actions that will affect a person personally. On the screen you can see in front of you what I have is a cross and the Star of David for religious and the American flag. All of these can actually bring certain thoughts to people's minds and actually affect answers of the way they're doing things. Along with that, we're also going to look at the nature of reality. Certain persons will have personal experiences based on certain events, and that's how they might remember it. It'll actually change their experience from the entire thing. Messy analysis and inductive approach. Basically what this is saying is that all your data is actually going to become jumbled and kind of messed up at one point. Your job is to sort it out and actually find the data that is more important and actually be able to make data from data that has already remained. We're going to talk more about this when we talk about concept mapping and mind mapping. Unique capabilities of research. This is more of a recent and modern approach. This is using online or mobile type research. This will give the researcher more control, more flexibility, and better convenience. It'll actually give you greater depth and detail to the questions that you're going to be asked. As part of the grounded theory is the Constructivist Theory. Basically, this is saying that as you receive data, it's going to keep building, building, and building. The experiment basically never ends, and it always has something to grow on by itself. As I brought up before, there's concept mapping and mind mapping. Concept mapping is very well organized, and it's actually a good way to keep all your data together and in an aligned process. But there's also mind mapping. Mind mapping is actually more flexible, and it could be easier to actually connect data together for later on analysis. Convenient, consecutive, quota, judgmental, and snowball are the 5 types of non-probability sampling. Convenient is the easiest because the researcher can select the samples and subject based on how easily accessible they are to them. Consecutive is just as easy as convenient, but a little bit more because the researcher is actually going to use all of the accessible resources that he has. Quota, the researcher is going to use equal or proportionate representation of all parts of the research. Judgmental, the researcher will select specific for purpose in mind of the samples or the subjects. The researcher will actually look at it and see which one would be more fit for their research. Snowball. Snowball will actually be using participants to select other participants. This way you can use your subjects to identify other subjects that might be involved in the same. There's 3 types of coding that are involved in grounded theory. There's open, axial, and selective. Open, it will break down, examine, compare, conceptualize, and categorize data based on the evidence. Axial happens after open. Data is put back together after the open coding, and it's actually brought together to find more data by making connections in other parts of the data. Selective would select a core category and relate the data to the others in other categories. After that, you would be using it to fill categories that need to be refined. Well, that's all I have on grounded theory. I hope you learned as much as I did, and thank you very much for watching. Have a good day.